You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Are you ready to learn the 3 secrets to launching a successful podcast? Hi, I'm Bill, a recent client of the Podcast Mogul. If you've been thinking about starting a podcast but aren't sure where to begin, he's got you covered. He is hosting a free webinar where he will share the 3 secrets that can help you launch, grow, and monetize your podcast without any fancy equipment or technical headaches. Click the link in the show notes to save your spot now and let him help get your podcast off the ground.
Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Better, the podcast mogul, and today we have the pleasure of introducing a distinguished guest, a serial entrepreneur, a devoted husband and a father, and of course, a passionate Formula One fan. My friends over in Ireland are going to love this episode. Our guest's entrepreneurial spirit, though, has been evident from a very young age because he was carrying a briefcase to school at 10 and starting 2 businesses out of his apartment by 21. With a track record of raising over $325 million for a hedge fund at, just the young age of 23, his journey has been marked by unique experiences and keen eye for innovation. He currently serves as a business coach, investor, and advisor to over 15 privately held businesses with, annual revenues ranging from just a simply $250,000 to over $10 million. Our guest brings a wealth of experience. His focus on condensing years into hours, eliminating the learning curve, and choosing execution over theory is what sets him apart. The last decade has been dedicated to being the number 2, silently, behind talented CEOs specializing in solving messy problems and tackling businesses' intricate, complex aspects. Our guest might be the answer if you're ever wish for someone in your corner who understands your journey. Without further ado, please welcome our guest, Tim Calise, to the podcast. Tim, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, and hopefully I can live up to the mantle, so I appreciate the kind words.
You're very welcome. I always think of myself as the guest hype man. I've always wanted to be that hype man on the MC. I was a fan of, rap growing up, so you always had the hype man. That's who I love to be. And for my guests, I think that's my job. So Tim, it's my pleasure giving you the hype, and I know you will, just from how we talked shortly before the show started. So let's just jump into it. Get the first question off the bat. Why at 10 were you bringing a briefcase to school, and was that your first entrepreneurial venture?
Yeah, so I think for me, it was a combination of environment and, just this, I think I had something deep inside of me, which was kind of this burning desire to tackle problems that I saw around me. So I grew up in an environment where my dad was in professional services, wore a suit and tie, took the train to work, that whole kind of thing. And I think I always knew I was good with numbers and things like that. I was always interested in money and investing. And I think as a young person, I tried to kind of combine this idea of how do I solve problems and get paid for it? And then I think the briefcase was simply just mimicking, what I saw around me. And I had 2 sisters, each of which loved the fact that I was such a cool kid in middle school that I took that briefcase to school. So I think it also taught me some lessons very early on around, they're really, at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur is solving a problem for those around you, and ultimately also for yourself if you're the core audience. So I kind of got bitten with that bug and have executed and followed that path a number of times throughout my career.
I love that. And so I want to talk about starting your own business at 21 in your apartment.
Yeah.
First of all, what were the businesses and how did you come up with the idea?
Yeah. So actually, I founded two companies while I was in college, and they could not have been more different. So the first was, and I'll say, I went to school in Washington, D.C. And so for anyone who's familiar with the DC area, I was kind of down by the White House, towards the Potomac River. And this is where like K Street is. And K Street is notorious for, it's where all the consultants and lobbyists and things like that come in from Maryland and Virginia. But as a college kid, this kind of ebb and flow of people and traffic led to a lot of activity in the middle of the day. But then by, 8, 9 o'clock at night, everybody left the city. Well, as a college kid, that's when things just got started to get interesting, right? So the problem that we solved, and this was my sophomore year in college, was 7-Eleven was about the only option kind of late night for a college kid to get drinks and stuff like that before we're going out. And so we said, there's got to be kind of a better way. And if nobody else is going to do it, then why not us? And so myself and two of my roommates, I think the idea we hatched on like a Tuesday. And what I learned was kind of speed to what I'll call product market fit. We were our own customer. So we said, well, what do we want? We want ice cream. We want cookies. We want, kind of mixers, that kind of stuff. And so from Tuesday night to Wednesday night, 24 hours, we found products. We went to Costco. We got a website set up, and we were live Wednesday night. I think our entire investment was like $50. And so we put up a website and said, hey, if you're interested in this whole thing, you can order online and we'll be at your door. What ended up being 7 minutes later was our average delivery time. That late night snack delivery business, we called it campussnacks.com, was an idea that was born out of necessity. It was cheap to start. It was quick to implement, and it was one of those things that we knew we had a captive audience. And that worked out very, very well for us.
I would assume so. Before Uber Eats coming around or
100%.
like that, like, wow, you crushed the market. A perfect example of solving your own problem that solves thousands of people's problem. I love that. Okay. And the second business.
Yeah, the second one was the following year. We had, in college, you spend, tons of money on textbooks. And then when you trade them in at the end of the semester, excuse me, you might get 10 cents on the dollar. So we effectively created a textbook exchange platform where, you can post your books at the end of the semester. And then if you're taking that class, obviously you can go in and kind of, we played middleman. Now, with any kind of exchange, eBay, marketplace, that kind of stuff, you have to have both sides of the transaction. And so we said, all right, this is great. We can kind of create the site and all of that. But if somebody goes on to find a textbook and there's no inventory, the whole thing's worthless.
Yeah.
And so I found the largest holder of used textbooks in the country. And I negotiated a deal, which was effectively a consignment deal. And every morning they sent me effectively a CSV, an Excel file with 50,000 textbooks in their inventory. So all we did was take the website, say, take this little file, put it on the website, and there was our inventory. And it refreshed every day. And so we launched with 50,000 books on the marketplace. But here was the challenge. I thought this was a product problem. It was a problem we had, but we spent a lot of money building this site. It was actually kind of fairly complicated. And just like, renovating a house or building a house, we kind of spent all of our dollars on building the product, and we had nothing left over for landscaping, which in our market, there was marketing in our case. And so we had this great product, great idea, huge value proposition, but it kind of died on the vine. And I think it kind of hit me. It put me back in my place a little bit because the first business was easy, speed to money, and this one was a little bit of a bigger lift. And I kind of violated some of the core tenets of how to do things right. And so I think that the two kind of, in my mind, one was a great success and has taught me a lot of lessons. The other one taught me lessons, but they were much more painful, but equally probably as impactful at this point in my career.
No, I think that's great learning, having your success, which taught you like how, the smart thing is to get to market as soon as possible, as quick as possible. And the other one taught you if it's more complex, it may not be the best thing. Like simplicity is sometimes the best. Now, both of those were obviously, were they both built with partnerships? Like you said, obviously the first one with your roommate solving you guys is, we're hungry, we want food. How can we do this? Doing it yourselves. The second one obviously was with partners.
Yes, I had partners both times and learned a lot about partnerships. One of them was I was a third, which worked out fine because, anytime you need to make a decision, it was kind of two against one if it wasn't unanimous. The second one was with a single partner. We were 50-50. And I don't think I was aware enough of what a 50-50 partnership meant, both legally, but just operationally. It's like, there's two of us. If we disagree, we're at a stalemate. And that really caused a lot of friction because ultimately you're not going to see things the same way, and we didn't have a method to kind of resolve some of those things in the heat of the moment. So I think it was one of those. It was really easy to start, but it was actually really complicated to kind of both unwind but also manage along the way.
I like that. I like how you had, again, a great learning opportunity for you in both cases, knowing going forward, you always have an odd number greater than two in a business partnership so that you can take care of things. I want to go into, because it's very important, having a great community around you, since you had those great partnerships. You guys in both cases taught you something. How important it is to be surrounded by like-minded or kindred spirits, if you will, when you're starting as an entrepreneur, either solo or with other people.
Yeah. If I look back, the through line for the last 2 decades of everything that I've done, the most valuable lessons that I've learned, the most valuable impacts that I can recognize have all come from somebody from the outside, a mentor, maybe a partner, someone who's kind of a little bit ahead of where I am right now and where I want to go. And so I think the two things I would say are, after college, I was very entrepreneurial, but I had this belief that there was a way or the way for things to go. And I ended up at a large bank, thinking I was going to go into investing and either be an investment banker or a broker or something like that. And I didn't know it at the time, but the person that I ended up working for kind of saw in me something that I hadn't quite recognized in myself. And there's this line, you can't read the label from inside the bottle. And whether that be personal or business, you need someone who can look at what you're doing and who you trust to give you perspective to be able to kind of venture down the path with authenticity. And so for me, I stumbled into it, and I literally spoke to this gentleman last week. That's how, 20 plus years later, we're still that close. He said, "You're in the wrong place. Great guy, wrong value vehicle. So where do you want to go?" And he made an introduction to someone who was starting their own investment company, which unlocked the opportunity for me to raise hundreds of millions of dollars in my early 20s and prove to myself that I could do that. Carry that forward to today. I believe more so than anything, and I grew up in this idea of like, if everything you see as a problem to be solved, you can default into taking the hard path, even when there's an easy one. So the question that I've asked myself many, many times is, how do I know whether I'm taking the hard path purposefully or taking the hard path because it's kind of ingrained in me? And the only way that I personally have been able to find that objectivity is to surround myself with other people. And so I run something called the co-creator community. And the idea of it is to shortcut the learning curve, condense those decades into days, and have someone else lend their confidence in you during those times where you may not have the confidence in yourself. And so it's both tactical, but also anyone who's been around the block as an entrepreneur knows what it feels like. And sometimes you just need someone else to pick you up and brush you off and to continue, get you to continue to go. And friends and family, although we love them, generally speaking, don't identify with what it is that we're thinking about and how we're feeling about things. And so I think many of us find ourselves in this kind of entrepreneurial isolation. And if we can solve for that and give some guidance along the way and be that objectivity, I think entrepreneurs have a better chance of success with that kind of recipe.
I love it. I love it. I'm definitely going to check out this co-creator community because I understand how important community is. And having those people struggling with the same things you are, or, just those 2 steps ahead of you can solve those problems. I love that. Apart from finding a community for like-minded entrepreneurs or investors or what have you, because everybody needs their whatever you're in, what is a piece of advice you would give an entrepreneur looking to raise capital? Because you've raised capital for a hedge fund, for other businesses and all that. An entrepreneur is looking for investors, looking to raise some capital. What piece of advice would you give them when they're just starting and they have no idea what to do?
Yeah. So the first question I would ask, or I would challenge, is, do you actually need to raise money? So I'll just address that briefly and then I can answer the question. I think so often when we think about a new idea, we think we have to raise money because, marketing is the thing that'll hold us back, or we need, absent of some big lifts like building out a big IT product, or, I know people in the biosciences, they need tens of millions of dollars just to be able to run a trial. But for most people who are offering a product or service, there's usually a way to test the validity of the idea without raising capital. And so one of the things that we do is we test before we build. So if you're like, and I was in this, take this book exchange. If I had just gone out and probably done a little bit of more sweat equity rather than going and actually raise some money to do that, I probably would have found out that it was going to be a harder path, and I would have saved myself, tens of thousands of dollars of loss. So right now, figure out the product the problem you solve and who you solve it for, and go to those people. And here's the script. Hey, Pete. Hey, Phil, I'm thinking about solving this problem in this way. If I do that, is that something you'd be interested in? If they say yes, then you go, great. I'll come back to you when I have you get 5 or 6 yeses. Then you go back to all of them and say, I'm going to build this thing. I'll have it live in 30 days, and I'm going to charge $99 for it. Is that something you'd be interested in? And if they say yes, then you go, great, take the money. I'll have it delivered in 30 days. You should always sell it before you build it if there's a way to do it. And I've spent a lot of time in SaaS, software, usually software problems we can actually solve, with Excel or some other basic thing, rather than spending, tens of millions of dollars on building something that may not actually happen, right? So that's the first part. The second is, if you're going to raise capital, think of from an investor's perspective, they are evaluating risk. So if you go to someone, an investor, and say, I have an idea, they're going to say, well, how do I know the idea is a good one? If you go to them and say, I have an idea, and I've interviewed 100 people that look like my core audience, and I have 80 yeses, but I need $1 million to build the thing before I can go out and do more, at least you've taken the risk down a little bit, or have pre-sold people, or whatever it is. Before you go out and raise the capital, come with some idea of whether it's going to work or not, because you're going to save yourself a lot of equity that you'll give away. And then you can also find the right type of investor. There's really two types. There are financial investors who have no idea about your operation, don't want to get involved, but they want to get their money back. And there are strategic investors. Angels, in many cases, are strategic investors because they have some experience and they want to help you along the way. So they're money and talent. Just know which kind you want, because if you get the wrong kind, both sides will be very uncomfortable very quickly.
Ooh, yeah, I can see that. If anything, I'd probably, for my first couple, want a couple of angel investors so I could learn from them. And then when I start building the companies that I want to sell, that's when you go finance. So that's how I would think of it anyways. Obviously, other people could be like, hell no, I just want the people that with the money. I don't want to learn anything from them. So go down that route.
Yeah.
But Tim, first of all, that's some great advice. And I love the two pieces of advice, the pre-selling as well as the knowing which person you want to invest with you. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Like right now, the last decade, you've been the number two behind multiple businesses. You're helping you have a portfolio of 15 businesses. Snap my finger, we're 10 years in the future. And I'm kind of doing this because in 10 years, I want to re-interview you and see, you know, kind of where you are. What is Tim doing in 10 years?
Yeah, so I'm a father of three. My kids are kind of in the middle school, getting into the high school age. And so my vision for the next 10 years for myself is to build a portfolio of companies that I am typically minority investor in. I want to help the next round of entrepreneurs be successful. And so my vision and my goal for 10 years from now would be to have a business that I'm a minority investor in, and I've influenced over $100 million of capital of revenue. So annual revenues of $100 million inside of a portfolio of which I'm a minority investor.
That's great. That's living the life, right? You work a couple hours a day, get to spend the rest of the time with the kids, get to see them through their most, traumatic period of their life, puberty, which no one enjoys. And all our memories from there are great. It's really interesting. I like that you want to reinvest in the next generation and help. Is there an industry that you have yet to jump into that's been tickling you, if you will, that's been interesting you to get into, but you just haven't found the ideal business, whatever it is, or the time to go into?
Great question. So my sweet spot right now, we call it a buy box in kind of the investor community, is like, what are the terms, what's the profile, the type of business that is right for me? So my point of view is the world, it goes, is built around or revolves around the idea of a relationship-based sale. I don't tend to get into what we call high capital intensity businesses. Manufacturing, as an example, is not in my wheelhouse. Services, B2B or B2C, is right in my wheelhouse. Anything with a subscription, a recurring revenue component, software fits that bill, is right in my wheelhouse. So the outskirts of that, which I have not dived too deep into, but I'm interested in, I think a lot about kind of over this next 10 years, what businesses can I get involved with where there's either a potential, roll up, or there are a lot of businesses that have not implemented all the technology, kind of advantages that we have. I'm a big fan of Cody Sanchez. For those that know her, she kind of talks about, she's a former private equity investment banker and talks about buying boring businesses. She talks about laundromats and car washes and stuff like that. But she also highlighted that something like there's 8 million businesses that are probably going to change hands in the next 10 years due to retirement. And of those, the majority of them don't have a succession plan. So if that's the case, and there's all this value out there, I actually like the idea of taking over an existing business and putting an operator or having operators that can get involved. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a big proponent of kind of teams. And so right now, my vision is to build a team where I am not the smartest guy in the room, that I've got experts in marketing and automation and all these other things. So I can take a business like that, run it through a process, have people who are better than I am at each of these disciplines, and then be able to hopefully improve the value, the cash flow in the short term, and the ultimate enterprise value of that business. So traditional brick and mortar, call it upgrades, renovation for potentially either a flip or a long-term hold, to use a real estate analogy, is probably something that's tickling at me, but I haven't figured out just yet.
Ooh, I like that. And I love that, helping the mom and pops that don't have the next generation in order. I love that because there's so many great businesses. I think of like restaurant or little cafes or stuff like that don't have, like, the kids don't want it, and they can't find a seller for it, and I would love for them to be still around because they're of our youth. I remember all the mom and pop businesses, the rentals and all that, and I think those I like that. I like that goal, helping the next generation and keeping those mom and pops around. um I have a question because this is about investing in yourself. So we might as well ask a question specifically about investing in yourself. So, Tim, with your extensive background and commitment to passing on knowledge, what investments have you made in your personal and professional development that you believe have been instrumental in your success? And how has this dedication to investing in yourself contributed to your ability to guide and mentor other entrepreneurs effectively?
So for me, it comes in kind of a couple of forms. The first is I have had a couple of very distinct chapters in my life, which have, some people kind of start on a path and then they kind of build into it. Mine have been these like big ascents and then a complete reset and then ascent again, but the highs are always higher and the lows are always higher, if you know what I mean. And so one of the things that I've always I've invested in myself in the ability to seek out and weather the idea of change, giving up the good for the great.
Mm.
So psychologically, having somebody, whether it be a therapist or something like that, I think is important for everyone, especially entrepreneurs, because we get in our own heads. So that's the first. The second is professionally, I have sought out mentors at every step to try to help educate me. I'm a big believer in my own self-awareness of I don't know what I don't know. And so I've surrounded myself with people who can help identify and point out those blind spots. One in particular, I'm part of a mastermind group that we meet weekly. I've been a member there for a couple of years. The gentleman who organizes it grew a company from $500 million to $3.5 billion in a couple of short years, and has just been fundamentally transformative in my life because what he believes and what he has taught me is the value of putting pen to paper. I always have a lot of ideas and a lot of things swirling around, and that was my biggest limitation because it gotten very complicated very quickly. And structured thinking is what I have learned over the last 18 months, and it has fundamentally changed how I approach the world because it is slowed down by very fast-moving brain, and it was something that was definitely holding me back.
I love that. And that's some great advice. Structured thinking. I'm going to have to look into that because I do find that my brain runs at Mach 2 sometimes. We are coming to the end, Tim, and I hate it because I'm learning so much from you. I have so many more questions. I'm glad that I at least booked you in for 10 years from now. Look for that invite. But Tim, I want to get a piece of advice for you. One last piece of advice from you. It's specifically to give to your 10-year-old self, Tim, just before he's off to school with his briefcase, to create another business adventure. What piece of advice do you want to give your 10-year-old self so that I can secretly give it to my nephew when he turns 10?
For me, the biggest lesson that I've learned is set your standards and never compromise them. And what I mean by that is everyone in the world will tell you why you shouldn't do what it is that you want to do. And trusting your gut and almost blocking everything else out is one of the most important things I think that I have learned. And the reason for that is actually not whether the idea is good or bad, but it falls under that premise of I'd rather fail on my idea than succeed on someone else's. And the things that eat away at me are the times where I have done something that is different than what I wanted to do, and it actually worked simply because I feel like it was the price that I paid for giving up on the dream that I had. And so I have spent the better part of the last kind of 10 years getting back to setting a high standard. It's my word of 2024, setting a standard, and don't let anybody or anything else cause you to settle below that standard.
I love that. That's great. Great piece of advice for a 10-year-old, and for people listening right now, set a standard, like you said, and don't compromise on it. Tim, I'm going to jump off stage here. I want you to let the audience know where they can find you, where they can follow you, or if you have something that you want to offer them, please feel free to. The floor is yours, sir.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you you listening. You can find me at timcalise.com. That's TIMCALISE.com. And as well as a thank you for listening to this episode, go to Instagram. I'm tim.calise on Instagram, and DM me the word better. And I have a free gift as a thank you for listening to the episode today. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, or even someone who just likes to toy around with a new idea, I have something for you as a thank you for listening to the episode today.
Well, I'm certainly going to be going over to Instagram and DMing you as soon as we're done here, Tim, or as soon as the episode goes live, so that we can have I can see what that amazing gift is. And of course, thank you again, Tim, for being here and being an amazing guest.
Thank you for having me, Phil. Appreciate it very much.
You're very welcome. To my audience, like Tim said, you can go to his Instagram, send him a DM saying better, and you'll be able to get a free gift from him as a thank you for listening to this episode. Or you simply can click the show notes, the links in the show notes down below, and you can obviously connect with Tim and see what he's up to. And as I always say at the end of this show, I thank you so much for listening, and remember to invest in yourself.
Thanks for tuning in. Now it's time to take the next step. When you're ready to dive deeper into how to launch, grow, and monetize your podcast, Phil's got something special for you. Join him for a free webinar where he'll reveal the 3 secrets that have helped countless entrepreneurs succeed in podcasting. Click the link in the show notes to save your spot, and let's turn your podcasting dreams into reality.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.